Hi everyone, it's Monique again. I just wanted to get started going over that second half of your first set of slides, okay? So this set of slides is going to be, or this half of the slides is going to be focused on research, okay? There's a lot of research that goes into psychology and things like that, right? You can't really just spew out these things without having the findings to back it up, right? So, first thing that they highlight in the slides, I believe, is the scientific method. And this is the same scientific method that we have been using since we were in the 6th grade. We were doing our experiments with the cyclones and everything else, right? It's the same one, it's just gotten more advanced over the years, right? So, one thing that's important that I want to take away, well, there's a couple of things I want to take away from there. One thing I want to take away is going to be the fact that we need to utilize operational definitions. So, what does that mean? Operational definitions are definitions where once we define whatever word that we're talking about, everybody knows what it is. So, like for instance, I had a client one time who he needed a particular diagnosis. He was having trouble getting that diagnosis because of his age in this country. So he went to, where'd he go? DR, I think. He went to Dominican Republic and was able to get that diagnosis and bring the paperwork back to get the services that he needed. Okay? Now, how does the doctors in DR say, oh, yes, they have this diagnosis? It's because they're using operational definitions. That's the same exact definition that we are going to use for this person and that person and this person and that person. So everybody knows it, right? So I should be able to go, let's say I have a diagnosis of ADHD. I should be able, or attention deficit hyperactive disorder. I should be able to go to California and tell the doctors there, and they should know what it is. I should be able to go to Oklahoma and tell the doctors there, and they should know what it is, right? So operational definitions are important in research because we can't say, like, for instance, I did a research study on adolescents and the way that they kind of move through their after school program when I was at UMass. And, but I had to define what that meant. What does it mean to be an adolescent, right? What does that mean? Does it mean that you are from age 12 to 21? Does it mean that you are from age 13 to 19? Does that mean that you are a teenager? Does that mean that maybe you're in high school? What does that mean? You needed a strict, concrete, operational definition. And the reason why brings me to the next point about the research facts. You have to be able to disseminate your findings. And what that means is after you're done with all those steps in the scientific method, you have to be able to have somebody else come and replicate it. Or either you can replicate it, right? So to show that it's good, concrete information and that you can use that information, statistical data, okay? The slides also go into different types of research. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about archival research. That is when you're sifting through all types of documents, whether it's the census, newspapers, this, that, and you're collecting all this data and you're making your own research kind of from it, okay? Naturalistic observation is another one. This is when you go into a place where the people or the things that you're studying are, and you make note of what's going on. This can be done in a confidential way. This can also be done by letting people know exactly why you're there. For instance, when I was in grad school, I had to do this. I was required to go to any type of support group, and I chose NA, Narcotics Anonymous. And I just had to, I could either disclose who I was or not, and I decided against it. But I was able to sit there and engage and, really get good research by doing that. Survey research is another one. Survey research is good because people will typically be a little more honest writing, right? And you can get better feedback from people as long as you're not hovering or anything like that. But you kind of account for that. And then case studies is another one. Case studies are good because it gives you a lot of great information. But it's the drawback is that it's only on one person. So it's like an in-depth, like somebody would follow me around for a week and they would know all about my life. But that doesn't say what you do, you know? Just because I go to, I don't know, the nail salon on Sundays doesn't mean that you do, right? So it's not generalizable, but it is really good in-depth information. Another thing that your slides went over was correlation versus causation. Remember, well, I'm not sure if you know, but if you go over your slides, it'll kind of get into it a little bit more. But correlation is when something has a relationship. Causation is when something causes a change in another thing. Okay? And just because things have a relationship, even if it's really strong, it does not mean it's causation. For instance, I'm sure some of you guys have heard the ice cream and violence analogy. As ice cream sales go up, so does violent crimes. Almost exactly like a 1-to-1 ratio. So does that mean that people get hot and they're like, oh my God, I'm so hot, I want some ice cream, and ice cream makes them want to kill people and hurt people or whatever? No. Does that mean that after you're done hurting people, you're like, oh yeah, I want some ice cream? No. But there is another, so there's correlation, but the causation factor is different. The causation factor is the heat. Heat, heat makes people go crazy, right? People start coming out more in the summer and all that. So just think about that. Just because things are correlated does not necessarily mean that it's caused by one another. Your slides also talk about experimental versus control group. Keep in mind that the experimental group in an experiment is the person or the group that is actually receiving the treatment, and the control group is not. That's the one that you're kind of measuring it against, okay? So for instance, if I take half of you guys and I say, okay, half of you guys get to study for this big final exam that we have. We don't do finals, by the way. I don't believe in them. But half of you guys got to study for 20 hours a week, and the other half, no studying, don't worry about it, enjoy yourself, right? The experimental group would be the group that actually got that treatment, that actually got the time to study, the 20 hours a week. The control group is who I'm kind of basing it off of, the ones who just learned the lectures, they're not studying, not worried about it, right? And then we look at the independent variable versus the dependent variable. Independent variable is the one that's being manipulated. That's the one that received the study time, right? So we're manipulating that. And the dependent variable is going to be the measured outcome. So your grades on that big, huge, scary final, right? Ethics. Oh, we go over ethics. So ethics highlights the morals associated with research. In the past, I'm sure you guys have heard of some things that have been horrific that we've learned a lot from. Just acknowledging that people have rights as research participants, right? So there's beneficence. That's the importance in understanding that we're gonna do no harm. Essentially, it boils down to that. So you're not the amount of advantages that come out of this research is going to outweigh the disadvantages and the harm that might be done. Okay, confidentiality. Everything should be private. It should be voluntary. Participants have to know that they can leave at any time. And also, informed consent, they should know what the study is about. Sometimes there can be times when participants don't necessarily get all the information as to what the study is about, but they should. But that's because, like, knowing what the study was about will shift. It'll create some type of bias. But that has to be approved by the IRB, which is the Institutional Review Board, and that's a committee that's put together to eliminate all the ethical wrongs that go on with research and things like that. There are also some other terms that your slides go over, such as like placebo, which is like a fake treatment. So in that analogy I used earlier with the studying, a placebo might be maybe I take the control group and I give them some work that has nothing to do with studying, right? The actual exam. So they think they're studying for the exam, but they're not. And if they feel more confident, maybe they'll do well. And I'm testing to see what works and what doesn't work, right? So that's just some more information on research. If you have any questions, as always, reach out to me. Please, please, please. Alrighty. I hope this helps.